For 3,000 years, humans built cities, wrote laws, and sailed across seas without ever putting wheels on anything. And when the wheel finally did appear, it wasn't for carts. It wasn't for chariots. It was for something so ordinary. You have one in your kitchen right now. Welcome to Origin Slabs, where we uncover the stories behind the objects that built our world. Today we're chasing one of history's biggest misconceptions, the idea that the wheel was invented for transport. The truth is stranger, more human, and a lot more about pottery than you'd ever expect. We'll trace the wheel's real origin back 5,500 years. Meet the forgotten civilization that invented it, and find out why the transport wheel was actually one of the hardest engineering problems our ancestors ever faced. Stick with us by the end. You'll never look at a wheel the same way again. Ask almost anyone when the wheel was invented, and they'll picture a caveman rolling a stone, or a Neolithic farmer strapping logs to a sled. It's the origin story we've all been fed, that humans saw logs rolling downhill, had a eureka moment, and the wheel was born. It's a nice story. It's also wrong. The truth is that humans lived sophisticated lives for tens of thousands of years without ever using a wheel. The first cities, places like Jericho and Catalyuk, had multi-story buildings, organized agriculture, and trade networks stretching hundreds of kilometers, all without a single wheel in sight. Even more striking, entire advanced civilizations thrived without wheels for thousands of years after they were invented elsewhere. The Incas built a 40,000-kilometer road network across the Andes, dragged multi-ton stones to construct Machu Picchu, and ran a continent-spanning empire with no wheeled vehicles of any kind. They knew about the wheel. They used it for children's toys. They just never built a cart. Why? Because the wheel on its own is almost useless. And that's the key to understanding its real origin story. Our story begins around 3500 BCE in Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in what's now modern-day Iraq. The Sumerians living there had built the world's first true cities. They had writing, they had schools, and they had a booming demand for one thing: pottery. Clay pots were the plastic bags of the ancient world. Every household needed dozens of them for water, grain, wine, oil, and trade. Hand-shaping each one was slow and uneven. But somewhere around 3500 BCE, a Sumerian potter took a flat wooden disc, mounted it on a pivot, and spun it with one hand while shaping clay with the other. This, not the cart, was the world's first wheel. It's called the potter's wheel, and it changed everything. With a spinning disc, a single potter could produce perfectly symmetrical vessels in minutes instead of hours. Archaeologists have found the earliest evidence near the ancient city of Ur in southern Iraq, in layers dated roughly 3,500 to 3,300 BCE, Sumerian. Pottery workshops suddenly exploded in productivity, and the potter's wheel quickly spread across the ancient Near East. Here's what's fascinating. For 300 years, maybe longer, this was the only wheel humanity had, a horizontal spinning disc. No carts, no chariots, no wagons, just a tool for making better parts. The idea that a wheel could carry weight, that it could roll across the ground under a vehicle, nobody had made that leap yet. And when they finally did, it would take almost a century to figure out how. So why did it take so long to move from spinning clay to rolling carts? Because putting a wheel under a vehicle is a deceptively difficult engineering problem. A spinning potter's wheel rotates around a fixed vertical pivot. It carries almost no weight. It never has to travel across rough ground. A transport wheel has to do all of that, and it has to survive doing it thousands of times without cracking. To build a working cart, ancient engineers needed to solve 4 problems at once. First, the wheel itself. It had to be perfectly round, strong enough to carry hundreds of kilograms, and light enough not to exhaust the animals pulling it. Early wheels were made from 3 wooden planks cut into a disc and joined together, and they cracked constantly. Second, the axle. This was the real breakthrough. The wheel has to rotate freely around a fixed shaft without wobbling, without binding, and without snapping under load. Too thick and there's too much friction. Too thin and it breaks. The sweet spot is surprisingly narrow. Third, the axle hole in the wheel. It had to be precisely drilled so the wheel spun smoothly, a nearly impossible task with Bronze Age tools. And fourth, the whole thing had to be attached to a vehicle that could actually steer, stop, and survive being pulled by oxen over uneven terrain. It took hundreds of years of trial and error to solve all 4. The earliest solid wooden wheels with axles appear around 3200 BCE, roughly 3 centuries after the potter's wheel. And for another 1,000 years after that, wheels were heavy, slow, and mostly used for ceremonial carts, not everyday transport. The light-spoked wheel, the kind you'd picture on a chariot, wouldn't appear until around 2000 BCE, more than 1,500 years after the first wheel was spun in a Sumerian pottery workshop. Once the wheel did finally take to the road, it didn't just move goods, it reshaped civilization itself. Armies suddenly had chariots, fast, maneuverable, terrifying. The Hittites, the Egyptians, and later the Assyrians built their empires on wheeled warfare. A single chariot with 2 horses and an archer could cut through infantry like a modern tank. Trade routes stretched further than ever. With carts, a single merchant could transport 4 times the cargo of a pack animal, and over terrain where boats couldn't go. The Silk Road, the Royal Road of Persia, the Roman network, all of them depended on the wheel. Agriculture transformed. Wheelbarrows, seed drills, water wheels, and mill wheels poured out of the same basic idea, multiplying human productivity many times over. The water wheel alone, perfected by the Greeks and Romans, was the closest thing the ancient world had to an industrial engine. And here's the quiet miracle. Almost every machine we've built since then, from a clock to a car to a hard drive, uses a rotating shaft at its heart. Every motor, every turbine, every gear in every watch. They are all, in a sense, descendants of that first Sumerian potter's wheel. The wheel didn't just roll across the ground, it rolled into every corner of human life. So the next time you see a wheel spinning under your car, inside a clock, or guiding a potter's hands, remember that it didn't start with a caveman. It started with a lump of clay, with someone looking for a better way to make a pot, who accidentally invented the single most important rotating part in all of human history. Here's my question for you. What everyday object do you think has the most surprising origin story? Drop it in the comments, we read everyone, and the best suggestion could become our next video. If you enjoyed this, smash that like button and subscribe to Origins Labs so you never miss an episode. The history of the world is really just a collection of origin stories, and most of them are stranger than you'd think. Next week, we are unpacking one of the biggest of them all. Who really invented the internet? I'll see you then. This has been Origins Labs.